Shalom 1650 AM in Montreal with the Money and Business Show. You have questions about your personal finances? You need advice in making sound financial decisions? Samuel and his guests are ready to take your call at 514-738-4100 extension 200. And now, back to the Money and Business Show.
We're back. Today's topic is mental illness affecting Canada's economic potential and their bottom line. And are there cost-effective ways for government to reduce ways of incarcerating youth here in Canada or even in North America? So today we have a professional. We have Vivian Backman is a professional in the field of mental health. She has a master's degree in psychology as well as in social work. How you doing? Good, good. So what are some of the indirect costs associated with mental illness, Vivian?
Well, indirect costs refer to the effects of mental illness on Canada's economic output, productivity, efficiency, and quality of life issues. Poor mental health costs our economy millions of lost workdays, along with a high cost of disability, that has to be paid for by individual employers. According to our economists, such as the chief financial officer of the TD Bank, our economic output is dragged down by more than 2% every year due to mental illness. Looking at the quality of life measure, we have increased morbidity, we have higher rates of suicide, poverty, lack of social supports, poor housing in people who suffer.
Now I understand why Bell Canada is getting into the action now, because they feel that this is lost wages, unemployment, it's costing them a lot of money. If Bell Canada calls you up and said, look, we have an employee who have a specific problem, how do you go about that? Like, what are the steps that you tell Bell Canada or a major corporation?
Well, most major corporations recognize the impact of mental illness and often have employment assistance programs of their own. That
in-house. In-house. Okay.
Well, no, they contract out to employment assistance programs. There are several in Canada, large assistance programs, where the employee can receive counseling services, evaluation, see a psychologist, and get the care that they need. It is available to them, and it's part of a package of employee benefits, and that alone shows you that employers across North America are becoming more aware of the need for these services and the ability for their employees to access quickly.
So when a major corporation calls and says, Vivian, we have this employee who has issues, missing work, can't sleep, what are the first steps that you ask this employee? Well, what do you do?
Right.
When they come to you, I'm sure like they're in a bad state. I mean, like,
sure. Like
I can't work, I can't sleep, I got problems at home, wife, and so on.
Well, we look at the medical aspects first, the physical aspects. He can't sleep, losing weight, not eating properly, can't concentrate, is disorganized, is confused. We look at the medical. We have to definitely have the person see a doctor first to look at all the impacts of all things that could be leading to some of these effects. It may be the depression, but the depression may be causing physical side effects that have to be treated as well. So it's not simply talking and giving the person a pill, but we are aware in the profession that both individual counseling and support and medication are the most effective treatments for depression.
So you start with counseling and then medication?
We do both simultaneously. We will, as I said, first examine the person physically, make sure nothing's going on in physical illness that could cause depression, and there are many.
So you're seeing a rise in all this?
Yes, there is
a mental illness. Yes. Corporations calling you.
Corporations don't call directly, but they do have their clients refer. We often see not all corporations have this employment assistance that I spoke to you about, so they do require services from the public system. And we orient them and refer them to the best resource available for their needs.
So let me ask you, why are people with mental disorders unemployed? Is that a good question to ask?
It's a good question to ask because most people with mental illness want to work. They have a lot of difficulty finding work. If they have chronic illness, they're perceived as not being able to hold a decent job. They're offered jobs that are way beneath their abilities, that are not stimulating, which is very demotivating. And it's mostly due to stigma and discrimination. And this also answers my question about undiagnosed mental health. Knowing that this works against you in our society, people do not own up to feeling ill and do not want to, more and more, as you can see with Bell Canada and issues like this, it is coming out because it's your neighbor.
And this is why I had the Bell Canada commercials. We're going to be listening to more of these commercials. And the first time I saw these commercials a while back, I couldn't believe they can come on and say, look, I have an issue. I have a mental issue,
right.
Whether they're ADD, ADHD,
or depressed, or anxious, or any of those things. And it normalizes it. Here's a wonderful person, athlete,
right.
Very highly functional, and it is an illness.
Yeah, the best of the best came on.
We lack knowledge. We are afraid, because it's very difficult for us to accept that we could have mental illness. And the proven way to help people with mental illness is early intervention and immediate intervention. And for that to happen, also stigma has to be reduced so that people own up to it and come and seek help. And I think companies are seeing more and more long-term sick leaves, disability leaves, related,
costing them a lot of money, the insurance.
Not related to a physical problem, but related to a mental problem.
Vivian, I want to thank you. Just stay here because we're going to be going live to Toronto. We have Vivian Backman as a professional in the field of mental health. She has a master's degree in psychology as well as in social work. Thank you. Just stay here. Also, I'm going to introduce Lisa Lalouse in Toronto, has her degree in social work and is a youth and child counselor. She has 20 years experience working with children and families in education and social work. She has been the driving force behind the creation of various programs to help children. She is currently the Director of Support Services at Open Doors Toronto. I'll repeat that, Open Doors Toronto, an online counseling service dedicated to providing teens and their families with counseling and support before, during, and after crisis. Have experienced firsthand the nightmare of her own family crisis. Lisa successfully guides family through whatever challenges they may be facing. An expert in analysis, she can provide preventive guidelines that will save families from tremendous pain and suffering, as well as financial loss and exploitation. How are you, Lisa? How you doing?
I'm great, Sam. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
Great, and I want to thank you for coming on to talk about an awesome subject concerning children and the youth. But is our money better spent incarcerating and detaining children? You're already laughing already. Versus, I guess you know what I'm going to ask you, right? Versus putting our money towards rehabilitation and therapeutic programming.
Okay, well, to answer that question, and then I want to go back to some of what Vivian talked about. No, our money is not better spent incarcerating children. Okay,
why?
To incarcerate a child costs society an average of $40,000 plus. To have a child given a therapeutic intervention, an alternative intervention that works, that we know works, costs just about the same. Okay, and that's in the short term. In the long run, when you choose such a punitive method, such as incarceration, detainment, placement, okay, removing the child from home, whatever it may be, you are sending that child on a lifelong course. The child will not, 9 out of 10 times, he will not receive the intervention that he needs, the rehabilitative, the therapeutic options that could help him and his family heal. And by doing that, by not giving him a proper intervention, by not giving him the support that he needs, he's just going to turn into a revolving door situation. He will leave that facility it's set up for failure. He will most likely not be able to meet the probation requirements, and he will land up back in hot water
so again,
and
Lisa,
eventually in front of Vivian.
Yeah, so Lisa, again, our system is failing the youth. But are we making these financial decisions based on moral judgments, or do they make a good economic sense? Let's get to the issue here.
No economic sense. Economic sense. I'm on this show because we are here to talk about dollars and cents. So there's a lot of dollars being put in a system and interventions that do not work. It makes no sense. Okay? And as Vivian talked about, she was talking about depression. Depression is the second most serious health concern in the world. And we know for many studies, 40% of youth have described and have the symptoms of depression. They describe feeling very depressed. Now, Vivian touched upon the idea of the shame and the stigma that surrounds this mental health issue. Imagine you're a teenager. Your friends, so some of you might experiment with drugs out of curiosity. Some use it as a way to self-medicate. And then you fall into addiction to the drugs, and then eventually you land up in, a lot of the times, the criminality of it, because the kids need money. They're not sober, so they're not even aware of what they're doing. So definitely incarcerating children is not the answer.
Lisa, how do we get a hold of you in Toronto? For 30 seconds. No, because we're going to go right into a commercial. You have a website?
Okay, www.opendoorstoronto.com.
And that's how we find you. Okay, good. Lisa, just stay on the line. We're going live here in Toronto. Today's subject is mental illness affecting Canada's economic potential and their bottom line. And are there cost-effective ways for the government to reduce ways for incarcerating youth here in Canada and in North America? My name is Samuel Ezerzer for the Money Miss Show on Radio Shalom CJRS 1650 AM Montreal. We'll be right back in 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Harmony Brown. I'm from Toronto, and I'm a face of mental illness. I experienced post-traumatic stress disorder and major depressive disorder. The symptoms are deep despair, intense distress, panic attacks, and suicidal thoughts. There's a long history of mental illness in my family. Many people have suffered in silence, continue to struggle, and I've lost my brother and my father to mental illness. I can remember having suicidal thoughts as young as 9 years old, but I'm the first to recover in my family. My road to recovery started about 8 years ago when I reached a point that I realized I couldn't keep living the way that I was. And slowly I admitted to myself that I needed help. Finally, I was able to ask for help, and thank goodness I was able to get the right help. The key elements that aided in my recovery are supportive friends, a great doctor, the right medication, yoga, spirituality, and resilience. Since my recovery, I have been working full-time. I go to school part-time, and I volunteer, and I try to stay active and live a healthy lifestyle. What I'm doing now to help promote awareness about mental illness and mental health and to stop the stigma is to speak publicly about the experience that I've had and my family, as well as deliver workshops. I have a blog that I've started, and by participating in this Mental Illness Awareness Week campaign. The message that's important to me is to not give up hope and to learn to love the things that you love more than you don't like the things that you don't like.